My name is Jade. I am 18 years old as of today, January 5th, 10th, 2026, and about 6 hours ago. I woke up, opened my laptop, and sent an email to Child Protective Services with their subject line, Formal Report of Child Neglect and Emotional Abuse from ages 15 to 18, and attached to that email were 372 pages of documentation, voice recordings, video files, text message screenshots, medical records, and a timeline so detailed that it read like a legal brief. And right now, at this exact moment, a caseworker is reading through everything I sent, and my parents have no idea that their entire world is about to collapse because I did not send this report to save myself. I am already 18, already legally free. I sent it to make sure there is an official, permanent record of exactly what they did to me so they can never rewrite history and pretend they were good parents. It started 3 years ago when I was 15, and I had just come back from a mandatory therapy session that my school counselor had arranged because my grades were dropping, and I seemed withdrawn, and the therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Martinez, asked me to describe my home life, and I started talking about how my parents constantly forgot about me, how they prioritized my older brother Kyle in everything, how I felt invisible. And she stopped me gently and said, "Jade, do you write any of this down?" And said, "No, why would I?" And she said, "Because memories fade and people deny things, but documentation does not lie. If you ever want to be believed, you need evidence." That conversation changed everything because I realized she was right, that whenever I tried to tell my parents how I felt, they would say I was being dramatic or too sensitive or misremembering things, and I could never prove what I was saying was true. So that night I went home and I started a journal, not a diary with feelings and emotions, but a documentation log with dates, times, exact quotes, witnesses, and I titled it Evidence. And I promised myself I would fill it with the truth, even if it hurt to write down. The first entry was January 23rd, 2023, my 10th birthday. I wrote, "Today is my birthday. Mom forgot. Dad forgot. Kyle forgot. I reminded Mom this morning." And she said, "Oh, God, Jade, I am sorry we have been so busy. Can we celebrate this weekend?" But the weekend came and went and nobody mentioned it. I spent my birthday alone in my room. I cried for 2 hours. Nobody checked on me, and I attached a screenshot of the family group chat where I had texted happy birthday to me, and nobody had responded for 6 hours until my mom finally wrote, "Sorry, sweetie, love you," as if 2 words could fix being forgotten on your birthday. I kept writing entry after entry, and at first it felt petty, like I was keeping score, but then I realized I was not keeping score. I was keeping proof. Because every time I tried to bring up how I felt my parents would gaslight me, they would say that never happened, or you're remembering it wrong, or why are you so focused on the negative? And I would doubt myself. I would think maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I am the problem. But when I had it written down with dates and details, I could not be gaslit anymore because the evidence did not lie. In March 2023, I started adding voice recordings. My parents did not know I was recording, and I made sure I was in a one-party consent state where it was legal to record conversations I was part of without telling the other person. And I recorded family dinners where Kyle talked about his achievements for 20 minutes. And when I tried to share something about my day, my dad cut me off to check his phone. I recorded my mom on the phone with her sister saying, "I just do not connect with Jade the way I do with Kyle. I do not know what is wrong with her." I recorded the argument where I asked why they never came to my school events, and my dad said, "Because Kyle's games are more important. He's going to get a scholarship. You're just doing theater." Every recording was a knife in my heart, but I saved them all because I knew someday I would need them. And in May 2023, I added video documentation using my phone propped up to look like I was just scrolling. I recorded my mom packing for a family vacation, and when I asked if I was coming, she said, "Oh, Jade, we thought you would want to stay home. You always complain about family trips anyway, which was a lie. I had complained once too, years ago, about being car sick, and she used that as an excuse to exclude me from everything. So I recorded her saying it, and I recorded them leaving without me, and I recorded myself sitting alone in the house for 5 days. By the time I turned 16, I had filled 2 entire notebooks and had hundreds of files organized in a encrypted folder on my laptop, and I started adding medical records because my parents refused to take me to the doctor unless I was visibly sick. I had asked my mom 3 times to schedule me a physical for school, and she kept saying she would get to it until finally the school nurse called her, and only then did she make an appointment. And at that appointment, I told the doctor, I have been having headaches and trouble sleeping. And she asked, have you talked to your parents about this? And I said, I have tried. They say I'm being dramatic. And the doctor wrote in my file, patient reports feeling dismissed at home. Recommend mental health evaluation. And I requested a copy of that file, and I saved it. At 16, I also started documenting financial neglect. My parents paid for Kyle's college application fees, his SAT prep courses, his travel baseball team. But when I needed money for art supplies for my APR class, my mom said, you will have to use your babysitting money. We cannot afford extras right now, except I knew they could afford it because I saw the credit card statement on the counter where they had just spent $3,000 on new golf clubs for my dad. So I took a photo of that statement, and I took a photo of my art teacher's email saying Jade still needs supplies, and I documented the fact that I had to ask my grandmother to help me pay for them. 17 was the year everything got worse because Kyle went to college. And you would think that would mean more attention for me, but instead my parents just filled the Kyle-shaped hole with more work, more social activities, more anything except focusing on their daughter, who was still at home. And I documented all of it. The family dinners where they FaceTimed Kyle for an hour and barely asked me about my day, the weekends. They drove 6 hours to visit him at college, but could not drive 20 minutes. To my art show, the Christmas, where Kyle got a new laptop and I got a $25 gift card because you're harder to shop for, Jade. I recorded the conversation where I told my mom I was struggling with anxiety, and she said, you just need to stop overthinking. Everything, Jade, not everything is a crisis. And I recorded my dad saying, if you were more like your brother, you would not have these problems. And I recorded myself alone in my room having a panic attack with my parents, downstairs watching TV, completely unaware their daughter was falling apart. In October 2024, something happened that made me realize I needed to prepare for an endgame. My school had a parent-teacher conference night, and my art teacher specifically requested to meet with my parents because she wanted to talk about my portfolio and my potential for art school, and I reminded my parents every single day for 2 weeks. I put it on the family calendar. I texted them the day before. I texted them that morning, and they said, yes, Jade, we will be there, we promise. And I waited in the art room with my teacher for 45 minutes, and they never showed up. I called my mom, and she said, oh God, Jade, we forgot. Kyle called, needed help with something. We drove up to see him. I am so sorry. And I hung up, and my art teacher looked at me with such sadness and said, Jade, this is not normal. You know that, right? And I nodded because I did know. And I said, I have been documenting it. And she said, good, because someday you're going to need that. And I realized she was right. Someday I would need to do something with all this evidence. I could not just collect it forever. At some point, I would have to use it. So I made a plan. I would wait until my 18th birthday, because once I was legally an adult, they could not claim I was a rebellious child or a difficult teenager. I would be an adult making an official report, and I would send everything. All 3 years of documentation to Child Protective Services, not to get myself removed from the home because I would already be 18, but to create an official record so that if they ever tried to claim they were good parents. If they ever tried to play the victim, if anyone ever asked what kind of parents they were, there would be an official government record that said these parents were investigated for neglect. I spent the months leading up to my 18th birthday organizing everything. I created a master timeline. I transcribed the voice recordings. I compiled the videos. I wrote a summary that read like a legal document. And I included a statement that said, I am filing this report as an adult, not seeking intervention for myself, but seeking official acknowledgement of what occurred during my minor years. I want this on record. I want it documented by the state. I want it to exist in a system they cannot manipulate or deny. January 5th, 2026, at 6 a.m. on my 18th birthday, I woke up and I sent the email, and then I waited at 10:30 a.m. I got a response from a CPS caseworker named Miss Reyes who said, "Thank you for your report. We are reviewing your documentation and we'll be opening a case file while you're now 18. We take reports of past abuse seriously and will be conducting an investigation. This will include interviews with your parents and possibly your brother. Please be aware that your parents will be notified of this investigation." I felt my heart race because I knew what was coming. And at 2:15 p.m., it happened. My mom called me screaming, "Jade, what did you do? CPS just showed up at our house. They're asking about neglect. They have files, they have recordings. Did you do this?" And I said calmly, "Yes, I documented everything you did to me for 3 years, and I sent it to them this morning." And she said, "How could you do this to us? Do you know what this looks like to our friends, to our family?" And I said, "I do not care what it looks like. I care that it is true." My dad got on the phone and said, "Jade, this is insane. You're making us look like monsters over normal parenting. You're blowing everything out of proportion." And I said, "If it is so normal, then you have nothing to worry about. But you and I both know it is not normal. And that is why you're panicking, because for the first time someone with authority is asking questions you cannot lie your way out of." And he said, "We gave you everything. We fed you, we housed you, we paid for your school." And I said, "You gave me the legal minimum." And, and he hung up. Over the next week, CPS interviewed my parents, my brother, my teachers, my doctor, my therapist, and Miss Reyes called me and said, "Jade, I want you to know that your documentation was some of the most thorough I have ever seen in my 15 years doing this work. You made our investigation very straightforward, and while we cannot remove you from the home since you are 18, we are adding this case to your parents' record, and if they ever have custody of minors, again, such as grandchildren, this will be part of their background." And I felt something release in my chest because it was official. It was real. It was on record. My parents tried everything to make me take it back. They called crying. They called angry. They sent my brother to guilt me. They told relatives I was lying and ruining the family, but I had the evidence. And when relatives reached out, I sent them portions of the documentation. And one by one, they went quiet because they could not deny what was in front of them. On February 1st, I moved out into an apartment with 2 roommates I had found online, and my parents did not even help me move. They said, "If you are going to destroy this family, then you can leave." And I said, "I'm not destroying this family. I'm just refusing to pretend it was ever whole." And I walked out with my documentation backup drives and my official CPS case number, and I never looked back. Because revenge is not always about making people suffer. Sometimes it is about making sure the truth cannot be erased. Sometimes it is about creating a record that will exist long after memories fade and people try to rewrite history. And my parents can tell whatever story they want to their friends, but the state of California has 372 pages that tell the real one. So tell me, if you had 3 years of proof that your parents failed you, would you send it to the people who could make it official, or would you let them pretend they were perfect forever?